I'll never forget, I stood up at the piano and I looked at him, and we looked at each other, and it was like we kind of knew.
I think you have something that's super rare, which is an earnest quality. I believe what you're singing.
Well, I mean, you know, some people would say I was fired. Other people would say that we had that creative differences arose.
Okay, you tell me, because you were in the room.
I was fired. The plane was found with no seats, full of Quaaludes, pot, and guns. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I've heard them all, but that's a new one. Kevin Cronin, thank you so much. I'm so honored to talk to you today. I've literally been listening to you almost my entire life.
Well, you couldn't help it. You were from Chicago,
in Chicago,
right? Yeah.
In Chicago. We'll talk about that. But I want to start here. Born in Evanston, Illinois. Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm.
So I was born in Chicago on the lake. So essentially, we were born about 20 miles apart. And although we're a slightly different generation, we grew up in the same world, Catholic world of Chicago.
Yeah.
And back then, Chicago was heavily Catholic, heavily working class. It's changed a bit. So I feel like there's an understanding there where maybe people outside of the Midwest maybe wouldn't understand what made your band REO Speedwagon important, what you guys were talking about important. It certainly resonated with the world that I grew up in. So let's sort of start there.
Sure.
If you want to talk about sort of your upbringing and kind of, because I found, and I don't know if you found this through the years, you know, American culture is so dominated by New York and Los Angeles, but they oftentimes overlook how valuable artists from other parts of the country are in contributing to the greater conversation of what we experience.
I agree.
Whether it's, you know, artists that came up out of the bayou singing those types of songs with a little bit of French flavor. And of course, the Midwest, we grew up, you know, in the shadow of the great blues artists.
Right.
You can't not grow up in Chicago and not be affected by the blues. So if you can kind of start there, please.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I grew up in Chicago. I was born in Evanston, but we moved to a all Catholic, all Caucasian suburb. And I grew up thinking that there were Catholics and non-Catholics. And you know where all the non-Catholics go at the end of the road, you know? So, but it was weird. And I remember, you know, getting to be about, you know, into my teen years, and I'm like, I'm not buying this. You know, this doesn't feel right to me. You know, there's other people in the world, but I'm not living amongst them.
Yeah.
You know? So when I graduated high school, man, I hightailed it up to the north side and went to Loyola University for a couple of years, played in local bands around Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I share something, because I did a little homework, and I was looking for, when I went to the north side, I was looking for a guitar player and a bass player for my band. So I called the Chicago Sun-Times, and I said I needed to place a want ad for guitar player and bass player wanted for original music band. It had to be the right. And she said, nope, you have to take out 2 want ads, one for each instrument. So
oh my goodness.
I'm like, where am I going to get $30? So long story short, I start something called the Musicians Referral Service. I'm running it out of my second-story walk-up just off in Rogers Park near Loyola University. I get a call from a guy who says, I'm in a band. We have 1 record out. We're signed to Epic Records. And you know the old saying, you have your whole life to write your first album and a year to write your second. So long story short, that was Gary Richrath, who, if you know anything about REO Speedwagon, Gary Richrath he's the reason that REO Speedwagon got onto the map.
Is it, because I was going to ask you this, but we're here now. Is REO's Gary's band, and it's like, does it make sense? You know, there's always got to be somebody who's like, this is really kind of my band.
Well, it certainly was. And then after the first album, he realized he needed some he didn't want to do it all himself.
Sure.
So he saw my want ad hanging in the Chicago Guitar Gallery, a little flyer. And so we started out, and of course, he was my big brother. I looked up to him because he was just...
What was the age difference?
2 years.
Okay. But when you're young, that seems like a lot.
I was 21, he was 23.
And he'd already been touring nationally.
Already been, well, kind of regionally.
But still, signed to Epic. This is no small thing.
Exactly. And the first album sold about 200,000 or so copies.
Yeah.
Irving Azoff was the manager, which didn't hurt.
Fellow Illinoisan.
Fellow Illinois, Danville, Illinois. And so Gary met me. I played a song, the first real song I ever wrote. I played it for him on my Guild acoustic 12-string. And then I did one song that I used to play in the folk clubs around Chicago that I thought no one knew of. It's the second cut on side 2 of Madman Across the Water. The first cut on side 2 of Madman Across the Water is this long opus that Elton and Bernie wrote about Native Americans, and it's kind of a cool thing, but I think it lost a lot of people. Second cut is a song called Holiday Inn.
Okay.
I thought sure I was the only one in the world who ever heard it, and Gary felt the same way. So of all the songs...
Oh my goodness.
Of all the songs in the world that I could have picked to play, so that it was like, boom, it was meant to be. And so yeah, but he's the guy who Irving saw and said, because they were playing fraternity parties and stuff like that. But when Gary came, Irving saw it and went, boom.
That's interesting. Talking about a little about your background, because I think these things are so valuable as a fellow songwriter. Dad, World War II?
Yeah.
What branch of the service was your dad in?
He was in the Army.
Okay.
They plucked him out of Loyola University Business School, and he ended up in Germany. He was there right at the end of the war.
Okay. So did he see combat or?
He saw some combat.
And then he, of course, saw the aftermath of the Nazis out of power.
Yeah.
Did he talk about that stuff at home or?
Well, he never did until he got to be about into his 80s, into his late 80s. And I was taking him to the VA because I'm like, Dad, well, first of all, my dad sent me a clipping from the Chicago Tribune that basically got me out of going to Vietnam. If I wouldn't have seen this little article because the draft numbers had happened. So
and they were doing the lottery.
It was like a lottery.
Yeah.
And if you got a low number, see you later. I got number 86. So I'm like, I'm screwed. What am I going to do? Do I go to Canada? I'm not going to go to Vietnam. My dad sends me a clipping from the Metro section of the Chicago Tribune, this big, saying, young men born between October 1st and December 31st of 1951 are exempt from the draft. I would have never seen that. I would have gone to Canada.
Was there a reason for that?
My guess is that maybe they had enough guys already through the lottery. Billy, I don't know.
Crazy.
It doesn't make sense. My dad's theory was there were some Chicago politicians who had kids.
That does sound about right. Let's just make something up, right? And it's got to be broad enough that you can't pinpoint them. That sounds very Chicago.
Very Chicago.
But back to your daddy for a second.
Sure.
When he did talk about his experiences, what did he relay? If you don't mind sharing that.
Yeah, no. My dad was always very reserved, and as a result, he was supportive, and he's a good guy, but I never got to know him that well until late in his life. And when he started opening up about World War II, the one story that blew my mind is that there was two. He said they were rolling through the Black Forest, and Hitler had surrendered, but there were still, it wasn't like all the Nazis said, we're not going to be Nazis anymore. I mean,
war doesn't tend to end on a single day like it does in the movies.
Right. So they had a bunch of troop carriers going through the Black Forest, and Russian soldiers were coming out and turning themselves in because they chose to be captured by the Americans rather than be captured by the Germans.
Sure.
But there were still snipers. My dad was sitting on a troop carrier, just hanging out. All of a sudden you hear, and the guy next to him dropped off the troop carrier. So he was, one guy away from, so But the thing was, what he told me is that they were instructed by their superior officers to not speak of what they were seeing in Germany. Because, back home, everyone was like, yeah, USA, let's go. We're patriotic. The women are, in a factory making bullets and whatever. But it wasn't a movie, as you say.
Yeah.
It was horrifying what was going on over there. And they didn't want, my dad wasn't allowed to write a letter home that to share his feelings about what was going on over there. So he became, I think, very, very closed off emotionally.
Yeah. Do you agree with me? I mean, because I grew up, I'm a little bit younger than you, but I grew up, with this kind of closed down war generation, a lot of drinking, a lot of kind of like, we don't talk about the war type of stuff. And I think the explosion of a lot of artistic voices in the late 60s was because it was like, I can't live like this. This
Really?
kind of, does that resonate with your experience?
Totally. You're right on the money. I mean, my generation, I was 12 years old when the Beatles came on the Ed Sullivan Show, so, and then the liberation it was boiling under, as you say, from all the repressed feelings, but the Beatles frickin' blew the lid off.
Did you see them that first time?
I saw them.
It's amazing how many artists they inspired, right? It's mind-boggling. And artists of every stripe.
Right.
Not just, rock and roll. I mean, people you would never imagine who went on to very successful. Mom was a social worker?
She was a social worker, yes. She was for Catholic Charities, it was called. She was a caseworker. And to her credit, she was an amazing woman. She graduated from Mundelein University. So to be her age, female, and have a college degree, that's some serious.
Fairly unusual for the times.
It really was. It really was. And so she would go into prospective adoptive homes unannounced to kind of, because everybody puts their best foot forward when they want to adopt a kid. But she was a surprise attack person. So she would see what was really going on.
Yeah, I was struck by this, and correct me if it's wrong, but when you were about 7, your parents adopted 3 kids.
Yes.
That's even if you liked them, that had to be a big shift.
Yes.
What was the inner thinking for your parents to bring 3 kids into your home? Did you get an explanation?
Well, the explanation I got was that because normally your mother gets pregnant, and I was the first child, only child for 7 years, apple of mom's eye, right? Normally you get a little preview of coming attractions.
Yeah.
And so there's something to talk about before the baby arrives. For me, it was just like one day my parents came in and told me that God had brought this baby to them, and that even though it didn't come out of mommy's tummy, I need to love this baby, the same as if it had, because that's what God wanted.
Okay. So
that's great. That's a nice explanation, very very clean and neat. But the problem was that inside, that didn't coincide with what my feelings were, because my feelings were. Do we swear on this show, or
you can say whatever you like? Yeah.
I was like, I had this whole thing to myself, and now here's this intruder coming into the home, and everyone's making a fuss over her. It's like I didn't consciously think that.
Yeah, he's 7 years old. It's hard
to
intellectually process that.
But that's when I and then they adopted 3 kids in a row over a 5-year period.
That's intense. And
normally you couldn't do that. The only reason we could was because my mom was a caseworker and knew the head of it. But it was if I trace back my artistic bent or whatever, I think that it kind of goes to there, because my feelings I wasn't allowed to feel what I was really feeling because I was told what to feel.
Yeah.
And that's tough on a kid. And hey, a lot of weird happens to kids in the spectrum of things that can happen to you when you're a kid. This was pretty. I'm pretty lucky that's what my problem was.
But it's all relative. It struck me as a very intense thing,
Yeah.
Almost all artists, not all, but almost all that I've met seem to have some particular moment in their life that sort of shifts
Right.
puts them in a spot where they have to go inward to figure something out. That it becomes part of the faculty that they later discover to communicate.
Right. So if you wouldn't have found the guitar, if the guitar wouldn't have found you, where do you think you would be right now?
That's an interesting question. I had a chance to have a career in academia because I was a good student. But I didn't feel passionate about it. I love learning, like even talking to you. I love doing the research and I love all that. But
I could see that in your music.
Bless you. But a life in the arts is really it's like a priest calling or something. You know, it has a divine aspect. It has a non-divine aspect. But it's an incredible responsibility. You know, to sort of say, hey, I'm going to try to sum something up that I feel and understand, and then to hopefully, in your case, millions of people around the world sort of go, I understand what you're saying. It's so humbling and it's an intense experience. So, you know, the beauty of great teachers is that they can inspire people, but, you know, we don't always see the fruits of their labors.
Yeah, I had an English teacher. I went to Brother Rice High School in South Side, all boys high school, crazy scene. If you weren't on the football team, you basically didn't exist, you know, and playing guitar was not exactly cool.
That's where I was going to go. So put those two together, like when you started playing guitar and getting into music.
Well, you know, I had been taking guitar. I wanted to play drums. My parents wanted me to play piano, so we settled on the guitar. And my dad, in his inimitable way, said, a guitar, you can take it with you anywhere you go. If you get invited to a party, you can bring your guitar.
Yeah.
And I was like, I knew of Elvis a little bit. He was a little old for me, but I knew he played the guitar and he was and the girls liked him. And so I was playing guitar, playing songs like Down in the Valley and Oh, Susanna, you know, my little book and learning chords. And then the Beatles came out. And overnight, all the girls that liked the guys who used to chase me through the neighborhood to kick my ass because I was on my way to my guitar lesson, those same guys, of course, wanted to be in a band with me because I was the only kid in the neighborhood who played guitar. So the Beatles changed my life in so many ways. The guitar, the fact that I had been playing for a couple of years was cool. But check this out. So when the Beatles first came out, they were signed in England, but Capitol Records in the United States were like,
that's right.
Who are these?
They came out in VJ. They came out in VJ.
Chicago. Yeah. Bill Trout, who was my first manager.
Oh my goodness.
With Nickel Records, yeah.
Wow.
But so it was kind of a mess there with VJ and Capitol, and a lot of times I would hang out at the music store where I took lessons, and there was a rack with sheet music. And so, of course, I Want to Hold Your Hand came in, bought the sheet music immediately. It's hanging on my wall right now in a plexiglass case. But Please Please Me came out. I saw the sheet music, but the record hadn't been played yet.
Wow.
So I grabbed the sheet music, snuck back into one of the lesson rooms, and they had the chords, and I knew some of the chords, and I could kind of read music, and the lyrics were there, and I figured out Please Please Me. So about a week later, and I was into it, about a week later, Please Please Me came out on WLS, and
Dick Biondi?
Yeah, probably, or Larry Lujak.
Gosh, those are names, right?
Dick Biondi.
God bless him.
What was he called? The president in charge of looking out the window. But so Please Please Me comes on, and I will beg your forgiveness for what I'm about to say, but I liked my version of Please Please Me better.
Well, that's the proclivity of a songwriter. You knew what you were doing.
Well, no, what it was that the Beatles inspired me, because what I thought at that moment was, maybe I can write my own songs.
Ah, okay.
So I owe it all to them.
How different was your version?
I wish.
Please Please, like, last night I cheated on my girl.
Da. But on the sheet music, I couldn't read that. I couldn't hear that.
Was yours more ballady?
Billy, I don't know. I wish I wish I had it. There was no.
Yeah, don't you wish you had a recording of that somewhere? Yeah.
I was like 13.
So we don't have to belabor too much, but this jumped out at me. You had a teenish band. I guess this would be your prog rock phase. Fuchsia.
Fuchsia, yes.
Covers, like, were you playing Cream or like?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We were playing Cream. We were playing Buffalo Springfield. A lot of Buffalo Springfield, Moby Grape.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that first Moby Grape album?
Yeah.
They
Great
released
band.
the great band. They released every song on that record as a single simultaneously. They really, it was crazy. But and then we sneak in the occasional original in between
Okay.
these kind of.
So were you writing then?
Yeah, I was
Okay.
writing some.
What kind of, like, give me the vibe of the, I'll get it. If you just give me the vibe.
Kind of a Buffalo Springfield-y thing. I'm very into Stephen Stills. Crosby, Stills and Nash came out when I was
a
senior.
68.
Yeah, 60. Yeah, I was a junior, senior in high school, and I bought that record. I was waiting for that record. My band used to make demos on my TEAC 4-track.
Okay.
And I was convinced that the only machine that our music sounded good on was that exact particular TEAC 4-track. So I went down to a Creative Artists Agency, which became CAA, but they had an office in Chicago, and somehow I figured out where it was, and I called, and they set up a meeting with me. So here I am, about 16, 17 years old. I go walking into the CA office holding a giant TEAC 4-track tape machine. These guys must have looked at me like, this kid is out of his freaking mind. But on that 4-track on that demo, we played a song called Bluebird by Buffalo Springfield.
Which Stills wrote.
Yeah. And this guy heard it. And he goes, kid, I'm going to give you an inside scoop. There's a band that's being formed right now with a guy from Buffalo Springfield, a guy from the Byrds, and a guy from the Hollies.
You must have flipped out, yeah.
And I'm like, those are my 3 favorite freaking bands ever. You know? With those first 4 Byrds albums.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a Rickenbacker 12. I had an ES335, my first real guitar.
Yeah.
And when I heard Mr. Tambourine Man, dude,
I traded
it for a Rickenbacker 12, which I still have.
And your 335 is probably worth more now than your Rick.
I wish I had that. That's the only guitar that I've ever owned that I don't have still. But
it still hurts me, the ones I sold them.
Yeah.
Why did I sell that one?
But that was the vibe of my demos, yeah.
So you were definitely attracted, like, let's call it the singer-songwritery.
Yeah, folk rock.
That shows up in your music, so it makes sense to me.
Yeah, folk rock was kind of electric folk kind of thing.
So at this point, you're still, mid to late teens. Do you have professional ambitions? Is you going to make a life of this? What are your parents saying? Just give me that kind of read.
Well, our band decided that we were going to join Local 10208, the Chicago Musicians.
Because you had to be in the union back then.
Had to be in the union.
Because my daddy played in Chicago and it was the same thing. You don't have a union card, you can't play.
Can't play. So we went down there. We had I'll never forget, it cost $148. Which it might have been $1 million.
How much money have you made since? And you still remember, right? It's me too, right? It's like, somebody will say, I saw you at this gig, and I'm like, I made $60 at the gig. And it's like 34 years later, they're like, how do you remember that? I'm like, trust me, you don't forget that stuff.
Remember. Yeah. And
sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no.
$148.
Yeah, $148, Chicago Musicians Union. And I forgot the question.
No, I was just trying.
Why was I talking about the Chicago Musicians?
I was just trying to get a sense on you. Are you going to your parents like, hey, I want to be a professional musician. This is what I'm going to do.
Right. Now let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Were you ever an altar boy?
No.
Okay.
No. I was raised Catholic, but I wasn't baptized.
Aha.
So I was not allowed.
So you're sorry, buddy. No heaven for you.
That's why I'm here. I'm trying to redeem myself.
But so our band we were pretty good, or at least we thought we were. And my parents were. My mom was extremely supportive. She was the kind of woman that would walk into this wonderful facility here and know everyone by name immediately, probably have sung a couple of Broadway show tunes to whoever was paying attention. She was a big personality.
Did she have a good voice? She
had a decent voice. But
who had the voice in your family? You must have got it from somebody.
My dad's was always a choir singer.
Okay.
I consider myself a guy who luckily wrote some songs and with an acoustic guitar and singing, and as a result I get to sing those songs. That's what, as far as I always think, like Becca Bramlett sang one of my songs once on a demo that I had recorded.
Okay.
And I don't know if you know Becca, but Becca's parents were Delaney and Bonnie Bramlett.
When you said Bramlett, so I thought you were talking about, yeah.
So
course,
Becca's their daughter, and she is fantastic. And
you know what? In fact, somebody recently sent me a recording with Becca Bramlett singing, so I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yes, and she's
great voice,
soulful.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well, Bonnie Bramlett had an amazing voice.
Yeah, and Becca's just beautiful tone and vibe, and her energy is kind of her own worst enemy sometimes. But I loved her, and I had her sing this song of mine, and I went, oh. Because and this was so dumb, and I finally figured it out, but I used to think that I put so much of myself and so much of my emotion into writing the lyrics to my songs, and I slaved over them to try to mold them to express what I was feeling, but as I said earlier, to kind of shield myself a little bit in the process. But and I think that I thought to myself that I put so much emotion into that side of it that all I had to do was go in the studio and try to be on pitch and on time, and that was about it. I didn't think of the fact of an evocative vocal performance.
Oh,
just never really occurred to me.
But when I think of you as a singer, your voice is so expressive.
You think so?
I think you have something that's super rare, which is an earnest quality. I believe what you're singing.
Huh. Well, I mean, it is mostly things that either I wrote or Gary Richrath wrote.
Yeah. But even because I know you guys had one big song that Gary wrote, and I always feel you're an authentic voice.
Oh, well, thank you.
Which I think is rare because, rock is performative, Not every heavy metal singer believes they're going to hell, you know what I mean? But there's an earnestness in your musical life.
I feel the same way about your singing.
Oh, thank you.
I really do.
Well, I grew up with, look, growing up in Chicago in the 1970s and listening to that radio, it provided a very high watermark when the bands that were successful from the Chicago area, yourselves, Styx, Cheap Trick, it's hard to explain to people who don't understand, but there was an earnest quality to Midwestern music. Baby was born of the system at the time I want to talk about it, like how you guys would have to go on the road and kind of make your name in clubs.
Yeah.
Just because you had a record deal, that was just the beginning of the hassle. You had to really go out and beat your brains out on those road circuits. And something about those albums really resonated with the working class ethos of the time. There was no shame of being earnest and hardworking.
Right.
And if it meant, you put in a good week's work and on Friday night you're going to go out and have a good time and still fall in love, it really resonated with the world that I grew up in. And what was crazy to me about that is I believed in that like it was a simple fact. Like music that I grew up with, including yours, was like there was no shame in being straightforward about what working people go through and what the dreams of, Bruce Springsteen is probably the greatest American songwriter to encapsulate the working class ethos converted in aspiration. Yeah, I'm working on my car and I got the girl on the corner, but I still want to get out of here.
Right.
There's something about that that's very, to me, it's Midwestern, but maybe it's just working class. But and there's the American, the Midwestern version. But what was strange to me is then when we first went to the coast, we were made fun of for that.
Like you guys were.
Oh yeah, you're too.
We were, but I didn't realize.
You're too into it. And you're like, what do you mean, hard work?
Interesting.
Like you were supposed to pretend that you didn't care, that you didn't want to be successful.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, that was.
But it was weird. We were like, huh? Like we love Chicago, but we want to get the fuck out of here. You know what I mean?
And who doesn't want to be successful? I mean, if you don't want to be successful, then don't get a record deal. And
this is my own harp, and I'm going to be quick about it because I really want to talk to you about your life. But it's remarkable to me that most of the critical intelligentsia that I encountered in the late 80s, going into the 90s, into the 2000s, almost all of them were from upper middle class homes and had been to college. And I'm talking about names we recognize, not Mundelein. You know what I mean? The point is they grew up in places where it's like you get to have those opinions. We didn't grow up in a world where you had the luxury of, the first world complaint of, well, you're not wearing the right T-shirt. So the identity of the Midwestern bands, particularly in Chicago, 70s going to the 80s, including also the great band Chicago, that is so dear to me. even when I didn't like what you guys were doing musically, I understood where it came from because we went to those same. I didn't go to Catholic school, but I grew up, everybody around me was Catholic or went to this school, and the nuns beat them over here. And we all shared that common experience of parents who'd been in the war, dad or mom or grandpa broke their back in some factory. And if they were lucky, they got to retire. And of course, Bruce Springsteen kind of captured, let's call it the East Coast version of that. But the Chicago version was oftentimes overlooked because of the nature of the New York and LA media. Anyway, that's a long discourse to talk about your experience.
But I think that the Midwest bands also, to your point, had a tendency to. We were very. There was a lot of positive. Like even the darkest song would have a happy ending.
Yeah,
and I think that's very Midwest. And so
you got to believe in something.
Well, yeah. So. But I think we also, not you. I think your generation kind of blew the lid off of it to another degree. We kind of, like I say, kind of shielded ourselves a little bit.
Yeah.
We told stories, but we didn't really let our guts out. You let your guts out, and that was kind of, to me, that was kind of rebellious. Against the Midwest thing, even though you were a Midwest guy.
Thank you. It was, at least for me personally, I refused to accept the story. Because just like yourself, I sat at tables with people who had been in the war, and you were told, don't bring it up. So you're standing there or sitting there watching somebody that you love drink themselves to death. They've been through something traumatic, and you're a kid, so your version of it is what you saw in a John Wayne movie. There's a cognitive dissonance that went on there, and it went on about abuse in the church. It went on there about child abuse in the home. It went on with people's secret drinking, drug use.
Yep.
We all grew up in the generation.
Homosexuality was, when I was a kid, there was no such thing. It didn't exist. Outwardly. It was clandestine. I feel so bad for these people.
I look back at people in my own family, and of course, people in our orbit who are obviously now, in hindsight, were obviously, LGBTQ, whatever term you want to use, and nobody would talk about it, and all you ever got was like a joke, like,
can you imagine though?
Sally's a tomboy, or Freddie sure walks funny, and now we look back in empathy and we realize they were probably really suffering. Because for people like us that were just, so let's call it, dealing with our heightened emotions, grappling with, post-war America, baby boomer world, and all that type of stuff, I can't imagine what people in those circumstances went through. It must have been really, really difficult.
Yeah, because they were still dealing with all that stuff, and then
that's what I'm. You're picking up what I'm putting down. That's exactly what I'm saying. They were going through the same stuff we were going through, and then they weren't even allowed to be themselves. It was bad enough we couldn't be ourselves, just being weirdos, right? Or sensitive, right? I'm sure you heard that word. Why are you so sensitive?
I still do, believe me.
So just before we talk about you joining REO for the first time, just give me your kind of musical landscape. Are you down on Wells playing gigs down there, Rush Street? Like, what's your musical life like just before you join REO?
I was on. I played the Earl of Old Town a few times, which was amazing for me. I was just a kid, but John Prine had played there. Steve Goodman had played there. All the Bonnie Kola.
And you love those writers and those artists, right?
I did.
I think you had a soft spot, best I can tell.
I did. And
James Taylor, by extension.
James Taylor, Jackson Browne, Danny Fogelberg, Illinois boy.
Great.
That first album that he made, my alarm on my phone, I should probably turn my phone on. My alarm on my phone is To the Morning, to the opening cut on Fogelberg's album. And I was down there when he made it in Nashville. But,
just the musical landscape you were in.
I was, I played clubs kind of up on Lincoln Avenue. There used to be the Orphans was an original music club. The Bulls was kind of a basement, more of a jazz club, but they had singer-songwriters. I played there every Sunday. I had a regular gig every Sunday, 4 sets a night. Do you know that I played 4 sets a night, and I strummed. I've always strummed pretty hard, but I used to use a medium pick back in those days. I had a Guild 12-string, and I would always break at least one string. So between every set, I would totally change the strings on my 12 string.
All of them.
Which took the entire
I was going to say, that's a 30-minute endeavor, at least.
And then no tuner. So it's like,
oh my goodness.
we didn't have tuners. So
that's true. I forget about that.
Yeah, you can imagine what I saw. I mean, it had to have been horrible. But I was doing my thing. But we had a little rock band, Fuchsia, and then we had a duo called the Late Late Show that did Simon and Garfunkel covers, acoustic versions of Buffalo Springfield and Moby Grape, and the occasional original. And
did you think you had a talent for songwriting?
I don't know if I thought I did. I was writing songs, and I loved songs. I just always loved songs, and and a good song is just it's such a if you're lucky enough to write one, it's just such a gift that you're offering to and for me, it was a way to connect with people.
Okay,
songwriting was a way that because I didn't have much luck connecting like you and I, just in real life. So songs were a way of sharing. And so I think that was my motivation. I was looking for something.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to be sports, I learned at a young age. And but when I was about 13, I had a guitar teacher named Jim Nance. And he had I'll never forget it. Gretsch Tennessee and an orange one with
those are cool guitars.
Golden knobs and the leather pad on the back, and
that's what Crosby played.
Yeah,
the Tennessean.
Did he play Tennessee? Yes, he did. You're right. And he was just my hero. And one day he told me I had natural rhythm.
Okay.
And I was like, because my dad a couple years earlier had told me that I wasn't a natural athlete, which was like, he wasn't trying to be mean, but to me at 11 years old, I was crushed by that. And then a few years later for my guitar teacher to say, natural rhythm, I'm like, well, I might not be a natural athlete, but I got natural rhythm. I've never forgotten that. And as a result, that's all I play is rhythm guitar.
Yeah. So you get the call from Gary Richrath, and now you're in this band. Did you feel at home? Did you feel this is the break I've been waiting for? Like, just put me in the room the first time you walk in and you're like, okay, because this is a band that's already running. This is not like a new band and you're hoping to have a dream. They're already in the dream,
right? And
you're dropping in the middle of this thing.
Yeah, it was interesting because Richrath didn't tell anyone in the band what he was doing. None of the guys, Irving didn't know.
Oh.
No one knew.
Oh. So you got that.
So I got that going. And but I had Gary on my team.
Okay.
And Irving loved Gary. I mean, you had to have seen us, back in the heyday. Gary was just, the first time I met him, he walks into my apartment. He's got a brown suede fringed jacket on, this hair, this ringlet hair. He's chiseled. He's like this sinewy dude. He's got this hot chick on his arm. And I'm just like, I'm late for poetry class. You know what I mean? I'm like, I was just, the fact that he had to have seen something in me that I hadn't quite seen in myself yet, because it wasn't like two equals meeting. He was definitely, I definitely had a lot to learn when I met him, and he must have somehow sensed that. I mean, I don't know, but I was dropped in. Irving was not happy at all because the first album sold over 200,000 copies. Irving's like,
What are we doing?
What are you doing? Well, why are you replacing the guy? And Terry Luttrell, the original singer, he had a good bluesy, kind of a gravelly voice, and he didn't play an instrument, but he had the mic stand moves and, the cool hair and, but I guess he wasn't a writer.
Okay.
And the first album is all credited to written by REO Speedwagon, but, the truth is, I think most of the songs, I think Gary came in with most of the songs, and then the band added like some prog rock, side sections, but then it always came back to the song. So, but I didn't know that, I thought REO Speedwagon was about prog rock and just hard rock and riff type stuff. And so I wasn't sure what to expect, but then I would come to learn that Gary was taught guitar by his Uncle Leroy, who was a country guy. So Gary in his soul was country. He just looked like Jim Morrison,
Going back and listening to some of your guys' music for the first time in a hot minute, I was struck there was more country influence there than I remembered.
Yeah.
Because I always remember it as being a hard-charging band that kind of had the ballad side.
Right.
And it was like the two sides of REO. And it had been kind of, in my mind as a kid, it had been hardened by all the road work. And hence the live albums did well in Chicago and stuff like that. So, but listening today, I was like, wow, there's a lot more country in here than I remember. I don't remember that influence at all. But when you say it, I'm like, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, total country influence.
So, go please.
No, go ahead.
So you're dropped into this thing, and are you guys doing that thing where it's like you go out for 3 weeks and you're opening for so and so? And are you doing that? I don't know, but in my mind they call them package tours. But because I've talked to like Geddy Lee from Rush, it'd be like they would get a call. They would go to sit in a town for somewhere and sit for a week, and they'd be at a Holiday Inn. They get a call. Okay, now you're going on tour with Blue Oyster Cult and so, and you just jump in. The next thing you know, you're on a tour for 3 weeks, and that tour ends.
Yeah.
So you're doing that thing?
That's how it was. I mean, there were regional bands, and we all knew who each other was. Midwest was us. Texas was ZZ Top.
Can you give some of the bands that you're sort of in that loop?
Well, yeah, Leonard Skinner down in the Southeast, but bands would come through the Midwest on a tour.
You guys would be picked. Oh,
and
okay.
And they dump us on the tour to open for, Grand Funk Railroad. Our first real tour was Black Oak, Arkansas.
Wow,
and they were amazing. I mean, Jim Dandy. Yeah, Jim Dandy kind of took me under his wing, and he was like my, kind of my father figure. And Tommy Aldridge on drums.
Amazing drummer.
I used to, every night of that tour, I sat behind with Little David, who was his drum tech, giant guy. And I would watch Tommy Aldridge I'd watch Black Oak from behind. But Tommy was, twirling his sticks, double bass drum. I mean, he was unbelievable.
Yeah, one of the hardest hitters probably in the history of rock.
And of course, Jim Dandy was, David Lee Roth when David Lee Roth was in high school, But so I learned, I just soaked it all up, man. I soaked it all up.
That's fantastic.
Every band we played with.
That's fantastic. So, because there's so much to cover, I hate to skip past things, but unfortunately, this part of your life ends poorly because you end up getting fired by the band. Can you just kind of walk me?
Well, I mean, some people would say I was fired. Other people would say that we had that creative differences arose.
Okay, you tell me, because you were in the room.
I was fired. No, what happened is
they made a big mistake. Let's start there, because they needed you, and we'll get to that too.
Well, it wasn't. It wasn't. There was nothing malicious about it. I had never sung so long and so loud and so hard, and there was no in-ear monitors. It was wedges, and normally the tours we went on, unfortunately, the headline acts wouldn't let you use the wedges because they wanted you to sound bad to make them sound better. And so I just blew my voice out, and I went to a doctor in Champaign, Illinois, and he said I should not sing for 6 weeks and not talk for 3 weeks. And meanwhile, we're rehearsing for the third album, and I'm like, oh. And plus, I'm the new guy. I've only been in the band for about a year, so in typical Irish Catholic Midwest fashion, I keep it all to myself, and I'm trying to not talk very much and not sing at rehearsals and only sing for the gig. I'm thinking every note I don't sing now is a note I'll be able to sing in the studio. It was crazy time in my head, and what they thought is that I was just being an asshole. That they thought I was being the cocky lead singer, didn't want to sing, didn't want to hang out. So eventually, it just came to a head, but I never told them what.
Wow!
I never told them what happened. Later I did, of course. But, it's like, I think if I just would have been out with it, I mean, I ended up getting fired anyway. So, at least I would, but I didn't know yet that you're supposed to express your feelings.
Yeah, not having been in a room with you singing, I mean, because, sometimes the microphone is deceiving, but I mean, I always got the feeling you sang very loud.
I think I did. I think I did.
I mean, I think of your bigger rock songs. I mean, it sounds like you're really, it's not straining. It's you know what I'm saying? It's a,
that's all I knew.
There's a power, you sang powerfully.
Well,
so I can imagine, because if you didn't have particular training, because I went through the same thing, it's like you start blowing your voice out.
Yeah.
And you know how bands are. They're off chasing whatever they're chasing. They don't care that you can't talk, much less sing.
Right.
You know, they look at you like you're weak, and you're like, the squeak coming out.
Yes, exactly. I just, within the past, going on 5 years now, I started working with a vocal coach. Changed my life.
Interesting.
We can talk off camera, but he's a local guy, Jeffrey Allen, who was a professor at USC, who was my son's vocal. My son went for the pop vocal program at SC, and just that's a whole other story.
Wow.
But
has your son got the pipes too?
Billy, I should be so lucky to be able to sing. I mean, he has his mother's good looks. My father's...
Well, you married well, yeah.
Yeah, I did. I married up for sure. My father's blue eyes, and his voice is... It's got a quality that's just so unique. It's like, how Sting's voice, it's just unique, but totally on pitch, totally, and, Shane has got that.
How old's your son?
He's 26.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's working on it. Yeah.
I had this note here. Where is it? Oh, I was struck, and I know you've been fired from the band, but there was a song on that album that you did with them where you say, and I think pretty sure it's your song, "Can't You See I'll Always Be a Music Man?"
Aha.
I thought, well, that's fairly prophetic.
That actually was the song that I played for Richrath in my apartment. I played two songs, Holiday Inn by Elton John and Music Man, which I had literally just written.
Wow.
And it was the most kind of rock and roll song I'd ever kind of done.
Oh.
And it was actually my first kind of, I consider it my first real song.
Yeah, I get that.
3 verses, all telling a story, and I guess it was prophetic. And it was actually, there was a little manifestation in there too, because I was just singing it the other day, and the 3rd verse, I actually sing as if I'd already attained some sort of fame, even though I hadn't. So
yes, I'm on the top of the mountain, and I'm looking down now. Yeah,
exactly.
That's beautiful. So it doesn't give anything away, but you're out of the band for 4 years, if that's my understanding.
Yeah, more like 3. I think about.
So that's a long time to kind of. You come off the adrenaline of a tour. You're hanging out with Jim Dandy.
Yeah. Mark Carter. I mean, come on.
Amazing. Right. So, okay, now you're back in Chicago. You're back on Wells Street or wherever you are.
Yeah.
Now what's the plan? Is there a plan?
Well, the plan was I was going to come home. My first producer was the guy who sang lead on Bend Me, Shake Me, a guy named Gary Loizo from Chicago.
American Dream.
Familiar with Gary at all?
No, I don't know him, but...
Yeah, he went on to produce Styx and be Styx's house sound man studio called Pumpkin Studios down on the South Side.
What? I never heard of Pumpkin Studio.
He was Gary was an amazing singer. But I came home, I contacted Gary, Bill Trout from One Nickel Records, VJ originally, and another Gary Zulo, who worked for Triangle Productions, the original concert promoter in Chicago. And the plan was I was going to get a solo record deal.
Okay.
And long story short, it never happened.
Were people not interested in you, or what was the sort of general vibe?
It wasn't right. And looking back, it wasn't right. I understand why that didn't happen. I wasn't ready for it.
If life had turned out differently, which it didn't, what in your mind would have been you turn into James Taylor, Dan Fogelberg, like, who are you? It's just because it's always interesting to me, because you went on to so much success with the band, but like the kind of the what could have been version. So at that point in your life, what would have been the like success in your mind?
My band would have sounded a lot more like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Oh, okay.
Than
almost more
REO
American,
Speedwagon.
Americana,
more jangly,
like Post Birds.
Yeah, 12. Rickenbacker 12, vocal harmonies. I was never the lead singer in any of my younger bands. I was always part of a harmony, of a trio of guys that sang, and we, each guy would sing lead on a few songs, but the big part was the 3-part.
But what's funny about that is, by about 77, 76, maybe even, power pop, which Cheap Trick became associated with, so that if you'd actually gone down that lane, you might have had success in that because it actually became a thing, and particularly in the Midwest.
Yeah, true. Cheap Trick. I heard Cheap Trick in your
you must have heard like 75, 76, somewhere around there, right?
We've done more shows over the years with Cheap Trick. Maybe Styx and Cheap Trick are tied, but but I love those guys. And
I've known those guys fairly well through the years, and I'm out of them, I'm closest with Rick, and I've been to Rick's house in Rockford a few times, and it's like, as you know, because you know Rick, it's like you're in Rick's house and you're like, wow, does he ever turn it off? Yeah. I'm like, you're like this at home? Like you go to Rick's wife is like, does he ever turn it off? She's like, no, he's Rick Nielsen 24 hours a day. Wow.
Yeah. That's funny because Dave Amato, who joined REO, been with us for 35 years. He was Gary. He took over for Gary. He played with Ted Nugent for 5 years.
Okay.
And
that's probably where I know his name. Yeah.
Yeah. So Dave was kind of the Derek St. Holmes replacement. Right. And he tells a story about how he lived with Ted when he first joined the band. And he said when he was alone with Ted, they'd wake up in the morning, go down to the kitchen. Ted had fresh eggs. They'd make eggs. They'd cook breakfast, just talking about whatever, and it was just normal. Dave said, when one other person entered the room, all bets were off. Ted turned into Terrible Ted, the Motor City Madman, at home. But if that person left, basically if you were one-on-one with him, Ted kind of dropped the facade.
Interesting.
But the minute there were two people, now it's an audience.
I love that. So when Gary, I could never say, the kids, we call him Richrath.
Yeah, Richrath.
Richrath, sorry.
Yeah.
Richrath. He calls you, hey, come back. What's your first reaction? You must be thinking,
I remember what I said. My response was, it's about time you called. Because by that time...
That's amazing.
But by that time, REO had made a couple albums with Mike Murphy singing.
Yeah.
Murphy, extremely talented dude.
But he was more of like a singer-songwriter guy, right?
He was more of a blue-eyed soul guy.
Okay.
He was all about R&B, and he played great piano, great guitar, sang, had a really unique voice.
Good-looking guy too, right?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. But
maybe not your type.
Yeah. But Irving had Gary, and Irving's partner down in Champaign had Murph.
Okay.
So when I joined the band, the expectation was, I think the word was out that REO was maybe going to make a change at lead singer, but the expectation was it was going to be Murphy. Richrath came and found me, and so when I left, Murphy was the obvious replacement. So that they made a couple of albums with Murph, and it never really gelled musically. Murphy's, like I say, extremely gifted, but Gary's more country. Murph was more R&B, and it just never felt
interesting.
It never felt right to me.
Yeah,
So
because you don't strike me as a bitter person, but what'd you think of their musical output in the time that you were gone?
There was no bitterness about it. I knew that I cooked my own goose as far as that was concerned.
Yeah,
I didn't hold it against them for firing me, but I wasn't a huge fan of those records. There was one song called Lost in a Dream that Murphy wrote with Bruce Hall, who ended up joining REO. I really dug that song. That was the title song of the middle album that they made, Lost in a Dream. But the next album, I listened to it, of course. I was curious. And I was also, I went through a pretty dark period when my solo career didn't take off. And that lasted for, a good 9 months of kind of isolation.
Yeah.
Had an apartment up on Marine Drive in Chicago, little studio place. I wasn't really seeing too many people. I'd stopped going down to the Wooden Nickel office because, what am I doing down there? But I met a few people, and I finally started playing again. I started going back to the clubs, playing solo, and I had a new kind of energy or something. Something was different. My voice was, I'd healed my voice, and I started writing again. I wrote a song called "Keep Pushing." I was walking down the street in downtown Chicago, and it just came to me, the cadence I was walking with, and that song was kind of like, I made a demo of it with some great Chicago players, but I thought, I could hear REO doing this song.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that demo got back to the band somehow, because Irving's partner is a guy named John Barrick, I was always closest to him with the management. So I think I must have sent that demo to John. I think John got it to the band, and they were, they
were smart to do that.
Well, they liked what they heard, and it that was the song I think that got me the gig back. Keep Pushing.
The album that you were on before you got fired, 2, REO 2, you certainly hear the successful, it's almost like, it's hard to put it this way, but let's call it the successful REO rock architecture with you singing. Like, I can hear that then, but then when you come back and it's Keep on Pushing, it's like, that's the band that I heard growing up.
Okay.
Like, it's like all of a sudden it just all snaps into place. Could you feel that?
Yeah. It was a big change. And I think the biggest thing for me was I wasn't the new guy anymore. I knew that if I, because they flew me out to LA, because that's where they were living, and I knew that the only way it was going to work is if I were treated as an equal.
Okay.
Because I never was.
Did you negotiate anything coming out? I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about, just I'm back and let's just move on.
Yeah, it was in the back of my mind that I wasn't going to be. When I first joined the band, Richrath would have his microphone right downstage at the far lip of the stage, but my microphone couldn't be that far up. So I'd be singing lead on it.
I love how bands somehow, the bands are the weirdest. If people really knew how bands really are.
Do you know that back in those days, Gary, every night after the show, the audience would leave, and of course the ground is littered with beer bottles and trash and stuff. Gary would come around to the front of the stage, and that was back in the day of flash cubes. Every camera had a flash cube with 4 flashlights. It would rotate, and after your 4th picture, you took it out and discarded it. He would come and look at the front of the stage at each mic position, because he wanted to make sure that there were the most flash cubes in front of him. and there always,
that's a new one. I've heard them all, but that's a new one.
And there always were, and I knew it, but I was determined that I was going to,
You showed him.
No, it's not that I showed him. It's that
I know. I'm just being silly,
but you know what I'm saying. I didn't want to be more than him, because I knew that I wasn't. I just wanted to be equal with him.
Okay.
And I think when he heard "Keep Pushing," I think that was a signal to him that I had kind of arrived at a new place.
Sure.
And I think he respected it. He liked that song, and that was the beginning of, bands have an arc. And and Gary and I, our arcs kind of met right after this period that we're talking about now.
Yeah. I love this quote, and tell me if it's not accurate, because sometimes I tell people quotes that I find like, I didn't say that. We play for free, but we get paid for traveling.
Yeah, that was actually, I can't take credit for that. That was our keyboard player, Neil Dowdy. But
it's certainly true.
I've adapted it, and I've used it for sure.
had anything shifted in the culture? Because, this is where the story gets really easy to tell. This is where you guys start to really take off. But did you feel that internally?
Well,
could you see it coming? Does it make sense? Did you start to see more people? Did something click this way?
We kind of felt like when I came out to LA and we rehearsed for the first time. We started with Keep Pushing, and then we started playing some of the songs off REO TWO, the album I was on, and they sounded different. They sounded better. The band sounded tighter. I was singing with more confidence. I think I felt more confident, and I think that equality of spirit kind of just manifested itself there, and we felt like I don't know. I don't know. It wasn't anything outside the band.
It was inside the band. I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, but the one thing we knew we needed was, up until then, Epic had chosen the producer. And the producer were always like highly pedigreed guys. Bill Halverson from Crosby, Stills and Nash.
Oh yeah.
Simzik, Bill Simzik from the Eagles. I mean,
huge resume,
big names. But for whatever reason, it just never quite worked with us.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we were a little slower than these guys wanted. I don't know what it was, but Gary and I made up our minds that we were going to produce the albums.
Interesting.
And because we just figured nobody knows this band better than us. And every producer we had, we would go in with songs, and then but by the time the album was done, it was like, that's not what we want the song to sound like,
Yeah. Was there pushback from the label on that?
Well, by the time we finally got to that point, it was the live album. Peter Frampton had come out with his live album, and suddenly.
Don't you love the music business? It's like you got to do a live album.
Yeah. Well, no, the live album was always just like an excuse, like a bookmark to hold time while you finish writing some songs. But suddenly, Peter Frampton is on top of the world.
We sold 20 million albums or whatever the heck.
Same songs that no one heard on his studio albums. The live versions. People liked. So they kind of paved the way for us. So, but Gary produced that one. I wasn't a producer on that, but I kind of was. But
you're talking about the live record.
The live record.
Yeah.
And I didn't get billing as a producer, and I was fine with that. But I realized that I kind of was being a co-producer, and so the next album.
I want to talk about the live album because that's where I really have strong memories. They played you guys at that point in Chicago. Like, I felt like I heard you every hour for a long time.
I mean, that was the first album that got played in Chicago.
I didn't know that.
We were much more popular in St. Louis, Indianapolis.
Was there a reason that Chicago stations were resistant to play a hometown band?
Well, we weren't a hometown band. See, we were a downstate band.
I know, but that's so silly to
me. But there was a distinction.
Because even I'm going to say this because even when Cheap Trick got popular, it's like, well, they're from Rockford, which is like 60 miles away.
I know. But Chicago was pretty.
Think about that here. We're in Los Angeles. It'd be like saying you're from the Inland Empire, not from Los Angeles. That's how silly that is. But that was how it was.
There was a little Chicago. Saw itself as a little notch above.
Even at some point, I referred to Styx as a Chicago band, and somebody goes, "No, they're from Dalton." It's like 20 miles away from Chicago, Dalton. I was like,
I call Styx a Chicago band.
But I'm saying it's like, no, they're from Dalton.
What's Dalton?
Who the fuck cares? They're from Dalton. It's like it's a suburb. It's like such a strange thing.
No, dude. When I was a kid, when I was in high school, our band Fuchsia got involved in a battle of bands at Brother Rice High School, my high school. And the band that we thought, we got this in the bag, because only one band got paid at the Battle of Bands. Then we heard who our opponents were, and they were from about 10 miles east of Brother Rice. South Side, near the lake, kind of a little rougher area. They were called the TW4.
Okay.
And I heard that they had a keyboard player, lead singer, who was pretty talented, pretty cocky. And so they came into my high school, and we either heard the rumor or started the rumor that their girlfriends, who are a little older, they were a couple of years old, a little hotter, went up to the guys and talked them out of their ticket stub, which was the ballot. And these girls, as I have been known to say, stuffed more than their bras.
Okay.
Because we lost the Battle of Bands, and it turned out that was Dennis DeYoung and the Panazzo brothers and John Kurlisi. They were called the TW4.
Amazing.
And so we go back a long way with them.
That's amazing.
So I know where they're from. They're from 10 miles down 95th Street, baby.
I love it. So, am I wrong in remembering that Riding the Storm Out was sort of the breakout song from that live record?
Yes, it was. And
again, correct me, but you had not sung the original, right?
Well, I sang the original in the, all my vocals are on the third album. In fact, my picture was on the album cover.
Are there tapes of you singing Riding the Storm Out from the third album sessions?
I think there probably are.
Have they ever come out? That's an I gotta go dig around on that.
I don't think they
anyway.
Ever...
So because I was looking, and I was like, because my memory is, of course, you singing Riding the Storm Out. So when I went to look in the albums, I was like, well, he's out of the band here.
Yeah.
So I was so surprised by that. So I thought you were maybe singing somebody else's song.
Yeah. No, they released it with Murphy singing lead, and it did okay.
Yeah.
But the version on the live album was my savior, because up until then there had been 3 different lead singers in the band. So we'd be pulling into town to play a gig. We'd have the local rock station on, and I would hear the radio spot for the concert, and it would be Riding the Storm Out with the wrong guy singing.
Yeah.
And it was so deflating. It would be like, everyone in this town is hearing that version. Now I got to go. It was hard enough as it was. But when the live album came out, now my voice was on all of their best songs, because it was kind of a best of album cuts, So that was the album that really that helped me out big time.
So if you don't mind indulging me for a second, I have a beautiful memory.
Okay.
My step grandparents lived in Schaumburg, and I was out riding my bike one day, and I had a boombox in the basket of the bike, and it was one of those Chicago days where a storm was coming in. You could see. About 10 miles out, here comes the storm. The winds are picking up, and I'm listening to the radio, and the guy goes, "You better get home," or something like that, and he plays Riding the Storm Out. And you do the introduction, Riding the Storm Out, people, or whatever you say at the beginning. Yeah. And I had this incredible memory of listening to you sing as I'm trying to race the actual storm that's catching up to me on my bike. It's like somebody got a wizard out. The winds are coming up. It started to drizzle a little bit, and you're singing. And I timed it where I got home exactly at the end of the song. I can't make this up. And now I'm sitting with you. So it's a fantastic memory.
I love that.
You're forever in my heart, because it's like I remember that moment like it was yesterday.
I love that. And it's so weird. And I'm sure you've experienced this. I have songs and that represent a certain moment to me, but to hear that someone else has one of my songs that's that moment for them, it kind of blows my mind a little bit. It's like the ultimate.
It's like, for me, it's the ultimate compliment.
It is the ultimate compliment. That's what I was about to say.
It's like, wow, it's so cool, right? So there I was in Schaumburg listening to you,
awesome.
Whatever that year was. So in Chicago, and I didn't know that you guys that was your first kind of breakthrough. I just remember in Chicago, it was just like when they got on you guys, they went hard.
Yeah.
And you guys just went like this straight up.
Yeah, we played Soldier Field that year.
Wow.
And
did you headline that?
I think we were second on the bill.
Who was the headliner? I know
Bob Seger.
Wow. Okay. Not bad.
He was ahead of us. He was a little ahead of us for sure.
So the breakthrough moment comes with the next album. Can't tune a fish, but you can tune a piano.
You can tune a piano, but you can't tune a fish.
Yeah. Which Pitchfork named one of the worst album covers ever. I saw that.
Did they really? Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
It's like I'm digging around. I've had my battles with Pitchfork, and I thought it's like who does a list of the worst album covers of all time? Because Chicago, we thought it was funny, right? Because it's the fish and the
And there was no Photoshop back in those days. So our
Oh my God,
crew
you had the fish.
went down to Long Beach Harbor, picked out the fish, drove it out to Joshua Tree. We were out there on that little lake, freezing our asses off, held the fish up, stuck the tuning fork in, got the right angle of this. I mean, there was a lot that went into that album cover. So.
Okay, because this is where you start to come in heavy. Roll with the Changes.
Yeah.
Great song. Time for Me to Fly.
Thank you.
Time for Me to Fly is where sort of like, let's call it the true appearance of like, the ballad side of the band. Is that fair? I'm not saying you guys didn't play ballads, but that's like, that becomes the REO signature ballad, like the beginning of that run. Was that you asserting more presence in the song picking because it seems to me that's where it starts to become more and more your band. Is that a fair way to put it?
I would say that's where Gary...
That's not to take away anything from Gary. It's just, but at some point you search yourself maybe or something.
Those songs, both those two songs you mentioned were definite confidence builders for me. Time for Me to Fly, I brought in on the album with Keep Pushing, and the producer, of course, turned it down because it only had 3 chords.
What?
I'm like, who cares how many
Have you listened to the Beatles?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
If you heard Tom Petty. So that was part of why I wanted to be part of the production team, because I didn't want any producer to take... I had Roll with the Changes and Time for Me to Fly. I'm like, please don't give these to a producer who's going to perhaps potentially ruin them or spoil them. And so when Gary and I went to New York, we went into the president of the label, and who
was the president at the time?
Ronald Luxembourg at the time at Epic. And there was a guy sitting in the back of the office. So we walk in and we're talking to a Luxembourg.
There's the guy.
Yeah, and here's the guy sitting back there. We didn't know who he was. And we're like, if we don't produce this album, we're not going to record. This is us coming in, And Luxembourg looks at us, he goes, it's fine if you guys produce the album. I just ask one thing. And we're like, first of all, we about hit ourselves. He goes, see that guy back there reading the book? It'd make me feel more comfortable if he were in the control room with you as you're co-producing the album. His name is John Boylan. He just produced the Boston album, the debut album for Boston.
That went 14 million copies or whatever. Great sound too.
Yes, that was the Rockman sound, the Tom Schultz sound. But and the engineer is a guy named Paul Grupp, passed away recently. I loved Paul, but we're like, sure, John Boylan. And so John came in, and I loved it because it gave Gary and I the total freedom to mold the music and to choose what we were going to do. And John was sitting back there, and if we ever had a question, or if we ever had ran into a blind canyon, we could always ask him, and he was always there. And about a month into the album, I was listening to some playbacks, and I'm like, this is not right. It's not right. We need to go back into rehearsal.
Do you remember what was not right about it?
I don't remember what was not right about it, but it just wasn't feeling right.
It was feeling... You just know, yeah.
You just know. So I went to John Boylan. I took him aside, and we had become friendly over the past month. And I said, John, how crazy would it be if I asked you if we could start this, if we could leave the studio, we were at Sound City, leave the studio, go back into rehearsal, come back and start over again. And he looked at me and he said, do it.
Wow.
And you have no idea how good that made me feel, because I was afraid to say that, to anybody. But when I had his imprimatur on it, I was like, okay, he must have been hearing the same thing. So we went back into rehearsal for about 3.5 weeks, and worked on the arrangements. And we set up in Gary's living room. He was the only one who had a big enough house that we turned his house into our clubhouse, and we just got into it. And, there were people there, and there was parties going on. And it was a whole kind of almost like a communal atmosphere. We worked up the songs. We started from scratch, came back to Sound City, and then got into it. And
wow.
It's pretty it's fun to think back to those times because you take them for granted when you're going through them. But when you ask me the question, I go, "Oh yeah."
It's just, I certainly think times where it's magical, but you don't know it's magic,
right?
Because you're just so like tunnel vision,
right?
Have you reached a point in your musical journey where you're like, okay, I'm living the rock and roll dream. This is working. You know what I mean?
Totally. We at one point, Led Zeppelin had an old airplane that they used. The Doobies had the Doobie Liner, and we thought
the Doobie Liner.
So we thought,
oh my God,
we're on the road all the time.
Yeah,
we need an airplane. So Irving's like, okay, I'll find you an airplane. So we show up at Santa Monica Airport. Here's this tail dragger, old World War II plane. It was called a Lockheed Lodestar.
Okay.
And but the REO wing logo there painted on the nose. And so we're now we had we couldn't afford it. There's no way we could afford it. But we didn't want to ask any questions. We did notice guys in the airports a lot of times kind of surreptitiously taking photos. And we just thought, well, maybe these are our fans, So fast forward, the pilot who had become the sixth member of the band says, we need to go meet the owner of the airplane. So he goes, we had a day off, took off out of Fort Smith, Arkansas. He goes, it's about an hour and a half to where the owner of the airplane is. So we're flying. We land in the middle of nowhere, this airstrip, like in the middle of the desert. And here comes this guy walking, and he looked like the bad guy in a Western. His face was just like a 1,000 miles of bad roads. Gets on the plane, and we're always, throwing around, laughing. We're
you're young.
We're young and we're fun. We're having a great time. He gets on the plane, and my seat was right in front of the door, and it was a tail dragger. So he gets in the plane, and it was silence. His vibe was so scary. He walks up to the front row, sits down, puts his tray table down. I couldn't see what he was doing, but I heard the sound of this snorting sound that was just like, and normally a brother would share. No. So now we take off. We're flying, and I'm looking out the window, and normally after 10 minutes, we're up at, 10,000 feet. I'm noticing we're still like right above the ground. We're like 500 feet, maybe 750 feet. Now we're 15 minutes into the flight, and I'm like, what is going on? All of a sudden, this guy gets up, walks down the aisle, goes back into the back compartment, and I hear what sounds like giant wrenches. I'm like, what's going on? Next thing I hear is the back door, the door of the airplane opens, and the wind starts rushing in. Now I'm like, okay, I was afraid to look around. I look over my shoulder, swear to God, he's sitting on the floor. His feet are like this, up against either side of the door. He's got a weapon, and from my seat, I could see the cows. I could see the markings on the cows. That's how close we were. He takes this thing, and it was like an Uzi or an AK, whatever it was. It was a combat level machine gun. And he's like having target practice. And I'm like, I can't even believe this. All of a sudden, door closes, gets up, clank, 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 goes back to his seat. We never met him. No one ever introduced us. He never said a word. So fast forward, we're in our hotel in Washington, D.C. Knock, knock, knock. I look through the peephole. There's a group of young fans, and they've got a book that looked like a high school yearbook, but it said Department of Drugs, Alcohol, and Firearms, or something. It was a department of the U.S. government. Open the page. The page. The photo is from the perspective of an unmarked vehicle with agents with their DEA windbreakers on, drawn down in the distance. There's the airplane with the REO Speedwagon logo painted on the nose. Turned out they had, during our days off, they had been taking that plane. We were their cover, basically, and they were running guns from Mexico. The plane was found with no seats, full of Quaaludes, pot, and guns. Oh yeah.
Irving. That's all I got to say. Irving.
I love it.
God bless Irving.
If he's on your side, you're in a good place. And Irving has always been on my side. He's even after
despite our occasional battles, I think Irving still likes me somewhere in there.
Have you had your
I've
moments?
had my I believe the last time Irving wrote me an email, he said I was destroying my life.
Oh.
But I still love him.
What was the context? What were you doing to destroy your life?
We had been Irving had a management, I call it a pyramid structure. I don't mean that as a pejorative, kind of like, Irving sits atop. He kind of oversees all these junior managers. Sure. It was called Frontline at the time. I think it's been disbanded at some point. So we were working with a couple managers under Irving's aegis.
Yes.
And in the beginning, Irving was very invested, and as time went on and it didn't turn into the big reunion tour that everybody anticipated, Irving got less and less interested. The managers and I at some point didn't see eye to eye, and I basically called the managers and said, I'm going to leave, but it was peaceful. I'm still, I would go out to lunch with either of the managers now. I still love Irving. And just as I was about to go out the door, I get a long email from Irving basically saying, you're destroying your life. If I could put it in a nutshell, and I don't think he was wrong in what he was suggesting, because I don't think he would be mad even with me sharing this. He basically was saying, every artist in your position at some point has to accept that it's more about the past than the future. Mm. And you face those challenges. I face those challenges, and maybe a fan wouldn't understand it. We all start as young people with a dream. And at some point, if somebody kind of taps you on the shoulder and says, it's really more about what's in the rearview mirror than what's in the front windshield, that's a hard day to kind of reconcile, even if you disagree. Because why are they tapping you on the shoulder? They're trying to tell you something. Mm-hmm. So Irving, in his very Irving way, and again, I love Irving and have nothing but respect for him. I think he was trying to tell me it's that moment in your life. Mm. And I wrote him back very nicely, and I said, Irving, you don't know me. Mm. And here I am some 15 years later, and the band's bigger than ever. We're still releasing new music. I've just done an opera in Chicago, that's focused on one of my past records, but I've completely reinterpreted it in a different way. So I don't think Irving saw that capability in me, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to Irving. I just don't think Irving understands the psychological mentality of an alternative artist. And when I say alternative, I mean an artist who came up in the Gen X, late 80s, early 90s generation, because we came just like when you were inspired by those artists in the 60s who at the time, the Neil Youngs and the Stills, they were all counterculture artists.
Absolutely.
Well, we were counterculture artists in a different generation, so just like those artists, you play by a different set of rules. You're never going to pull a Graham Nash or a Stephen Stills or a Neil Young or a David Crosby and tell them that they have to play by the rules. No matter how many times you tell them, no matter how many times you tell them the music business is going to change, they're like, we changed the world. And you can't take that out of somebody's DNA if they're one of those types of artists.
Yes.
And we were absolute total punks. We got away with murder with the stuff we did. So when somebody taps you on the shoulder and says it's time to be an adult, you think, it's not really my gig.
Well, you're more the exception than the rule, too.
Oh, absolutely.
And so from Irving's point of view, you can see why he would have said that.
That's why I said I don't take it disrespectfully. Right.
Yeah, but from your point of view, it makes perfect sense.
I thought it was insane.
Yeah,
I thought it was insane because I'm like, I got plenty of years to mess things up.
Right.
So thank you for listening. So let's just talk because there's only so many people who reach the top of that particular mountain in the next record, the Hi Fidelity record.
Hi Infidelity, yes.
Hi Infidelity, sorry. I mean, you guys hit the absolute top of that particular mountain for that particular time.
Yeah. We kind of did. We kind of did. That was
10 million records. The record goes diamond.
Yeah.
And we share that in common. We both had diamond records.
I noticed that.
I mean, that's a pretty exclusive club we're in, right?
It is.
So you did it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you've been asked about it a million times. Of course, the great hit, #1 record. I mean, just whatever you want to say about it, I'm happy to just, because I like to not ask the question that everybody asks you. So you talk about whatever you want to talk about in that experience.
Well, I can say that the experience of recording that album that went on to become Hi Infidelity, you don't know what it's going to become. You're just writing songs.
Yeah, it's just another record. You're going
making demos, and so we made demos of 10 songs, and then we took a week off to listen to the demos and
I think the demos are out, right? They're part of the deluxe package.
The album is at least 50% those demos.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we couldn't beat them.
We went what we call in the biz, demoitis.
Yeah. So, but in our case, I was the only one who, I heard these demos, and I listened to them over and over and over, driving around, LA, and I was like, I'm starting to fall in love with the way, not just the songs. Normally I hear the demos like, oh, you got to put this here and move this. I'm listening. I'm going, this is, I don't see that much work that I have to do on this, on the arrangement side or on the lyric side, or it sounded really good to me. Gary's has some guitar parts that were just like, how did he do that? The feedback that opens the album, we could never duplicate that. And, but I had to convince the band.
Really?
Yeah. And the engineer who, it was just a rough demo. And I'm like, these are, so we went back to the studio, played Beat the Demo, finally couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And we ended up using the demos as the foundation and built the album on those tracks. So I just feel like, and then the album goes on to be one of the biggest albums there is. It just, I like the fact that it started so organically, that there was no, REO Speedwagon gets a rap for, that we somehow manufactured the power ballad. And hey, of course we wanted our record to get played on the radio. Who doesn't? But Keep on Loving You, I woke up in the middle of the night, kind of felt my way down the hallway of my little house in Woodland Hills, sat at my little Wurlitzer red plastic piano that Gary Loizo had owned, and played that little piano part that of Keep on Loving You, wrote those verses, and I don't know where it came from. It just happened, and there it was, and it was. So I went back to bed because I was too tired. Next day, I go into SIR where we're rehearsing, and I immediately sat at the piano and started playing those verses over and over again. You can imagine the band is sitting there going, "What the is this guy doing? When is he going to stop playing this stupid song?"
You're in a rock and roll band.
I'm in a rock and roll band. And there's a certain type of song that's an REO Speedwagon song, and some songs are not REO Speedwagon songs. And I would contend that if a member of REO Speedwagon writes a song, so I'm sitting there playing this, all of a sudden, and I didn't have a chorus, and I'm just playing along, and it's kind of dark, and then this chorus came to me, and it's like this hopeful chorus, and Richrath, I don't exactly know what was in his head, but at some point he got up, plugged in his Les Paul with a curly cord directly into a Marshall, which is how he used to play. Sometimes he had a wah-wah pedal, that was it, and he started playing along with me. Or he might have just been trying to drown me out so I would stop playing this stupid slow song. But at one point, we kind of hit on something, and I'll never forget. I stood up the piano and I looked at him, and we looked at each other, and it was like we kind of knew that something, some brain cells had something had sparked.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, this is what we've been trying to do for the last 4 years.
Wow.
Without thinking that we were trying to do it.
But I get what you're saying. It came from an organic place. It wasn't a record company thingamajiggy.
I think it became that.
No, trust me, that's on the piece of paper next.
Is it? Okay. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, you guys end up having 2 number ones. That's one of them. And I think the next one is on the next record. Classics. I mean, they're worldwide phenomenon songs, once you have one of those songs. So, as a guy who grew up listening to the rock side of the band, I didn't understand it. And I'm sure you got that from a lot of fans, right? Like, what is this, right? Is that REO Speedwagon, the band I grew up with. So I don't need you to speak to it necessarily in the personal, because I think it's more interesting to me that, Chicago ended up doing it. You guys certainly leaned into it. Why wouldn't you? Just had a massive record. But looking backwards, it's the stuff of people getting married. But isn't it interesting? I don't know, you tell me, but that these road-tested bands that really came out of rock, progressive rock, 60s music, it ended up turning this other thing, which some people kind of go, I don't know about all that. You know, a lot of DX7 all of a sudden, if you get the joke.
I do.
You know, there's a lot of, know, even the Doobies, right? I mean, who were basically kind of almost like a bar band.
Jam band, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they got Michael McDonald and they went down that. So it as a fan of the time, it seemed like it suddenly was like somebody flipped a switch somewhere and suddenly everybody's doing ballads. And in the 80s, it was the same complaint with the hair metal bands, that they all went ballad crazy too. So
well, that was the way to get your record on the radio.
Sure.
But for us, we were kind of like Time for Me to Fly. You mentioned Time for Me to Fly. There was no piano in Time for Me to Fly. That was a acoustic, pure guitar song.
Yeah.
It was a folk song. And so for us, it wasn't so much ballads. It was just mixing kind of hard rock with folk
Can I
songs.
say it slightly differently, though?
Okay.
I think you're a really strong rock singer. Some people like, they're better at one thing or another, but you sing rock very, very well. And like I said, I always identified with you as a rock singer. So it wasn't like I couldn't identify you with you as a ballad singer, but something about the way you sang ballads, it was like, there's this other thing that you do. And maybe the definition of the times, of course, is part of it. But you seem to step forward and sort of like, I don't know, it's like, I don't want to say it's the best you, that's the wrong way to put it. It's like all of a sudden there's this other version of you too. Like it was 1 + 1 = 7 or something. And that seemed to expand the vision of the band. I didn't understand as a fan at the time, but as a writer now I get it like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
How could you not go there? Because you were really good at it. It's not like you were bad at it. It was obviously the public agreed.
Yeah. I think I'm a better rock singer than I am I have to sing ballads because I write them sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did after Hi Infidelity, the record company definitely started.
Yeah.
It's like, we want another one of those.
Yeah, we'd have about 7 more of those if you could.
Yes, could you please? And everyone in the band was like, yeah, let's go back in the studio. And I'm sitting there going, with what? I have unfinished songs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ready to go back in the studio. I still haven't digested what the phenomenon of what just happened to me. Billy, it changes your life. Suddenly, you're clawing to be recognized, and you want to be famous.
Now you can't sit down and have an Italian dinner with your family without somebody coming up and asking for a picture and autograph.
And even worse than that, I always thought that fame and fortune and hit records would cure everything. All the insecurities would go away. Everything would. And so when you get to the top of the mountain and you're like, oh, shit, not only is it not curing all this stuff, it's exacerbating it.
Sure.
People are looking at you. And you're hiding all this stuff, and now everyone's looking at you, and it makes it harder to hide when people are looking at you. So my mind was blown. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Well, the rest of the guys in the band are like, let's go. And I'm like, you guys are
Hey, write another one of those if you could, Kevin.
You're out of your mind,
So I Googled or something. I asked, whatever, one of these AI systems, how many records have you sold in your musical life? Over 40 million.
Really?
Yeah.
I should probably get a royalty check then at some point.
Well, I can't speak to your deals.
Surely we've recouped by now.
But look, the band, at least from my perspective, is an institutional band. So as a way to kind of bring it to a restful thing, the most recent news, and I don't do clickbait, so I'm not asking you for the dirt on the kerfuffle with the band, with the name and the thing and you on your own and all that. But what I guess what I'm after is, I just thought, maybe the easiest thing to do is try to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. You've got, huge songs that are crossover hits. You're singing ballads that are still being played in Thai cafes, right? Two things occur to me. Number one, you stay with the band. and you've stayed with the band up until really recently. You guys just toured last year as the time of us taping this. But secondarily, you resisted the temptation because I'm sure somebody went to you and said, hey, you know, it might be time to jump off the ship if you want. A lot more money, and it can be about you, and because we've all been in that. So I guess what I'm saying in a very kind of amorphous way is, not do you regret staying, not do you had you wish you have a solo thing. It's like, where does that all land for you in 2025, the time we're taping this? Are you cool with it if it's you've reached the end of the road with the band, with that group of people? Like, how do you sit with all that? Because it seems to me, and this may be an unfair way to put it, and again, I'm putting myself in your shoes. If I'd stayed loyal to my band through the thick and thin, through the great gigs and the bad gigs and the county fairs and the fans wanting to hear "Keep on Loving You" for the 8,000th time and all of the stuff that only people like us kind of know what that feels like. It's not a bad thing. It's just a particular type of pressure. Where do you sit with all that? Are you at peace? Or, you know, like, because you don't strike me as somebody who's got any, you know, what's axe to grind?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Yeah. No, I really don't, Billy. During the pandemic, I think people tend to downplay the impact that the pandemic had on everyone, and it's really easy to look at the rearview mirror and say, it was nothing. You know, people overreacted, but I was one of the guys who would be washing down my groceries at home. So the pandemic, it just shut everything down. You know, I was walking to sound check on Friday the 13th, Friday, March 13th, 2020, when the plug got pulled. But what happened is I was home for a year and a half, and I really started to like it. I liked seeing not just my kids' ball games and graduations.
And you have 6, right?
No, I don't. That's somehow I know. So I should have warned you about that.
A touring musician.
Yes. Who knows? Maybe there are some that I don't know about. If you are, hello. But
I love you.
Yes. But that time really affected me, and I started kind of reassessing some things, and I started wanting to reach further. I think REO Speedwagon had kind of, you know, with Gary's death, that was, you know, Gary leaving the band was difficult. His death was difficult, and I think I was wanting a little more, and not necessarily outside the band. I wanted to lift the band in some way. Tommy Shaw and I became friends in the year 2000, and he has a similar. Tommy Shaw from Styx. He has a similar idea as I do, and we kind of balance each other, and so I'm getting a little lost here, but I wanted to lift the band. I wanted to stay within the confines of REO Speedwagon, but I hired a vocal coach, and I started working on my singing, working to really get the most that I possibly can out of my voice, to put the most emotion into the songs, to really get that thing that Becca Bramlett showed me back in the day in Nashville. And so I really started working hard. And I still, when I leave here, I'm going to my vocal coaches. He's in the neighborhood. And so I really started putting in the 10,000 hours on my voice. So when the band got back together after the pandemic, I was psyched. And some of the guys in the band shared that excitement, and some of the guys didn't. And so it became a little bit of a, like, wait a minute, what's going on here? You know? And so there was a little bit of a chasm opening within the band. And then you know, Bruce hurt himself. Our bass player, Bruce, who was my sidekick. Every side project that I ever did, Bruce was always part of it. And we were just simpatico. Musically, he was a Beatles guy, as I am. And but Bruce hurt his back a long time ago, and I had been working on on a presentation for the band for a Las Vegas residency, which has to be different than what you do on tour.
Sure.
So the idea was to perform the entire Hi Infidelity record all the way through with a massive audio-visual presentation, different, very theatrical in a way, but still rock and roll.
Yeah.
But I put a lot of work into it with our content and lighting director, Paul Dexter. And when Bruce hurt himself, it was a week before we were supposed to open in Vegas. And I put a year of work into this. And people buy tickets from all over the world to come in for a residency. And so I didn't want to lose the residency. And I said, Bruce, you got to go home, take care of yourself, and he did. And I just was, if there's a way to salvage this thing, I'm going to salvage it. And it just so happened that Elton John had retired, and his bass player, who's named Matt Bissonette, Greg Bissonette's brother, all friends of ours. And Matt came out, learned our entire set list overnight, came in with a stack of charts, read the charts for a couple of days, threw the charts away, and there's something happened in the band, and I was trying to lift the band. Now I felt the band lifting me, and I felt myself, and I was in the midst of these taking these vocal lessons, and suddenly there was this new energy. One of the guys in Elton's band told me not long ago. He goes, Matt Bissonette's the kind of guy where any band he's in, the band gets better, and so it was just like, unplanned, completely unplanned.
Yeah.
Life just sometimes happens. And then what do you do?
Right.
So that was kind of the scenario, because I think I love Bruce, and I think he might feel like I was out to get him. I've heard that from people that there's a feeling there, and it's just not the case at all. I hold no ill feelings toward him. It just became an impossible situation where it's always been my job, I felt, especially since Gary left. If I remember the day that I was either going to go and do a solo album or stick with REO Speedwagon. I was standing with John Barrick, and John said, "Well, if you're gonna end the band, I guess we gotta empty the lockers, sell the equipment." And it was like the ice water thing where they pour ice water in your head. I was just like, wait, what? That just blew my mind. And I thought at that moment, I haven't really given this my all yet. Because before it was Gary and I, and then the band, of course, Alan and Neil and Bruce were all part of it, but Gary and I were sitting in the front seat of the roller coaster, And so I felt it was my job to continue to keep REO Speedwagon moving forward. My relationship with Tommy Shaw and our relationship with Styx helped that, because Tommy felt the same way about Styx. Tommy joined Styx right about the same time I rejoined REO.
Right.
And there was talk of Tommy and I being in a band together for a hot second. But so there was never any preconceived notion on my part that I thought that REO Speedwagon would ride into the barn. We would all retire at the same time as friends. Yeah. The crew would be with us.
Life is funny that way, though, right?
I know. It just didn't work out that way. And it's been a year for me of kind of my mind being a little blown by that, because like you said it, REO Speedwagon is an American institution of sorts. And so there's a lot of people that are disappointed by the fact that REO Speedwagon has put out a statement saying that we're not going to ever tour again. So, but the good news is that for the last 4 months, where normally I'd be thinking about the 2026 tour, I haven't been thinking about that for the first time in 50 years. So And my wife was out of town. My wife went down to Florida and reconnected she wanted to hang out with her sisters down there. She loves her family. She's a Wisconsin girl. Beautiful. I love her to death. Without her, I'm not sitting here right now. But so I'm home by myself, back from the road, and not thinking about the next tour. It's like, who am I? What am I? What am I doing?
I'm laughing because I know this feeling.
You know the feeling.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's like, what am I going to do? And what I found myself falling into is challenging myself. When when you're on tour, or I don't know if your tours were the same as this, but our tours were very male oriented. We had one woman on the crew. Our band is all men. And I know you've had a female in the band before. I'm not sure how that works, but so your male friend group is pretty much spoken for. But I had a few male friends at home. Husbands of my wife's friends who I've been close to. But I'm like, I'm gonna. One of the neighbors was walking his dogs. Great guy. His name's Michael Edel. Brilliant. I've always loved him. Never really went up and hung out with him. So we went out and had sushi together, and so I've been just like, Pat Benatar and Brian Adams played the Forum, and Tommy, who you might have met, manages Pat and Spider, and said, "What? Come down to the Forum, see the show." I'm like, I'm going to sit in traffic for 2 hours to see someone else's show at the Forum? And I'm like, okay, yes, I am going to do that. And I did. And Billy, it was just like this inspiring, like mind expanding feelings that I had being there. So I'm just challenging myself and pushing myself. One of our neighbors up at the beach invited me to go out on a little boat ride with him out to the islands, out to the Channel Islands. I'm like, okay, let's go. So that's kind of where my head is at now. I'm just like, I'm going to finish my book that I've been working on for 9 years. I'm not going to be living between tour legs for the first time in 50 years. And you know how that is.
I understand this very deeply.
You're out for 3 weeks. You come home for 10 days. It takes you 10 days to catch up on everything you missed in the 3 weeks, and then you're gone.
Out you go. Yeah.
So, So here we are.
Well, my last question I was going to ask you is to ask you to define happiness, but I think you just did.
Well, as a matter of fact, it's funny you should say that, because when my wife got back from Florida, I was sharing some of this with her, and I said, Lisa, I feel like I'm fighting for my happiness. And she said, well, that sounds kind of negative, fighting and happiness. And I said, well, I don't feel like it's negative. I feel like I'm fighting for it. Like I have to push myself. Mm-hmm. And she kind of helps push me too. She always has. Sure. That's been kind of a piece of our relationship. She's a brilliant woman. I met her. She worked for David Geffen back in the day. And she believes in me sometimes more than I believe in myself. And she pushes me to, when she hears me wanting to challenge myself, she's like, yeah, that sounds good. Do that.
Yeah. Thank you. I love talking to you.
Thank you, Billy.
Thank you so much.
What a pleasure.
Thank you.